Good morning. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 6th day of the 6th month in the year 2023. This is Business Morning on Channels Television. It's time for 55 minutes of relevant and current business conversation. I'm Ini John Mekwa. And we'll start off with what's going on in the grain scene. Chicago corn rose more than 1% on Tuesday after a weekly government report shows a sharp decline in United States crop rating amid hot and dry weather in parts of the Midwest grain belt. Wheat rose for a fifth consecutive session on support from tightening world milling wheat supplies, with Australia estimating lower crop in 2023-2024. The most active corn contracts on the Chicago Board of Trade rose 1.1% to $6.03 for three-quarter of a bushel. Wheat added 0.9% at $6.29 for half of a bushel, and soybeans gained 0.7% to $13.59 a bushel. The U.S. Department of Agriculture rated 64% of the U.S. corn crop in good to excellent condition in its weekly crop progress report on Monday, and that's down 5% points from a week ago and below the lowest in the range of estimates. However, lower demand for U.S. grains and oilseeds limited the upside potential in prices. The USDA said that weekly exports inspections of corn fell by 1.18 million tons from 1.34 million tons the prior week. Soybean export inspections were reported to 214,247 tons, and that's down 11.9% from a week earlier. Oil space now, prices edged lower early today, Tuesday, coming off gains made the previous day as concerns about the global economic backdrop outweighed supply worries raised when Saudi Arabia announced its biggest output cut in years. Brent crude futures slipped 27 cents to $76.44 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude fell 33 cents to $71.82 a barrel. Brent had gained as much as $2.60 on Monday, and U.S. crude as much as $3.30 after Saudi Arabia, which is the world's top exporter, said that it would drop its output by 1 million barrels a day to 9 million by July. The benchmarks pulled back, though, to more modest gains by the end of the day. Market participants are now waiting to see if the United States Federal Reserve will hike or hold interest rates in June, and what China's May trade data on Wednesday will indicate about demand in the world's second largest oil consumer. Higher interest rates from the Fed could curb energy demand, although several analysts say consumption will be strong. Markets now peg the chances of the Fed pausing its interest rate hikes this month at 77%. China is also dealing with a new COVID wave that's limiting traffic temporarily. And Nigeria and other members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, as OPEC Plus, have agreed to cut oil production volumes in effort to ensure stability in global oil markets. This was made known to journalists in a statement issued by Nigeria's delegation, led by Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, Mr. Gabriel Aduda. The statement, which follows the outcome of OPEC Plus Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee that met over the weekend in Vienna, also mentioned that Nigeria, Congo, and Angola have agreed that the highest production volumes of the last 6 months, that's November 2022 to April 2023, be used as basis for determination of other 2024 production quota. And yesterday, we did bring you that story about the Maritime Workers Union strike. We even had one of the executives in the studio. We can tell you now that the leadership of the Maritime Workers of Nigeria have suspended their one-day strike following the intervention of the Nigerian Shippers Council. The union, which began that strike yesterday, Monday, June the 5th, over pay and working conditions, have reached an agreement with the Shipping Industry Agencies and Freight Forwarders Employers Association. In a joint statement, both parties have agreed to establish an acceptable minimum standard on the condition of service in the shipping industry, especially in the area of gratuity. Also, a 1-month timeline has been set for the completion of negotiations reached yesterday. Away from that, now recognized as the largest tech show on the African continent, GITEX Africa's maiden edition over the weekend in Marrakech, Morocco, brought together tech enthusiasts with innovative solutions and disruptive ideas to tackle global challenges. Thought leaders in the field are now calling for more public-private stakeholders engagement aimed at consolidating the progress made at various levels in the African tech ecosystem. Our correspondent, Mayo Adegoke, was there.
One nation bound in freedom, peace, and unity.
It's Nigeria Day at the Nigerian Communications Commission booth on day 2 of GITEX Africa. And as policy leaders, government entities, as well as tech influencers and thought leaders continue various engagements on site, young African startup founders in attendance seize the opportunity to promote their solutions in hopes of finding global partners.
Oh, it's been going well, actually. I've been able to onboard a number of startups here to join the business, as well as a few investors. Had the governor of Lagos State also came here yesterday and actually I showcased my product too. So it's been going well.
Getting to speak with a lot of investors, partners. I've made a lot of partnerships and a lot of network here. So it's been very, very interesting. And I hope to go back to be able to explore these opportunities that we have here to scale our business further across other African countries beyond Nigeria.
Many of the over 900 tech entities spread across the exhibition floor are in Africa for the first time. This is in part due to the complexities associated with the continent of 54 countries. However, stakeholders say the presence of over 30 government agencies taking part in the digital summit will lead to key policies that benefit the economies of African states.
For both communications and commerce, you need trust. One of the basic things about trust is identity. How can I tell that you are who you say you are? I mean, like many countries have national ID cards, but you don't have a combined system that we could pull to verify that. And I mean, as a basic thing, if you can sort out the identity issue, our borders become more permeable in terms of people being able to travel across. Trade becomes more possible. I can trade with you out in Nigeria and me being out in Kenya without having to think, are you the true person you say you are? So that would be my main challenge, identity.
Buhari, he was sworn in for a second term in office on May 29, 2019.
It's a marketplace for solutions. A Nigerian tech content creator, Eric Okafor, who has been documenting his interesting finds, shares his experience with me.
I feel like there's a lot of companies who are serving African market, and I didn't know they were, because they are Finnish companies, French companies, Polish companies, like from all over the world, but they are serving Africa, and that was interesting to me because I have a lot of information about African tech companies, but not so much from outside Nigeria that are actually supporting us in one way or the other.
I'll be happy to, without naming them, I'll be happy to share some of those experiences.
As the event carries on into the third and final day, there is an emphasis on the exportation of African talent to the world and how the maiden edition of GITEX Africa is accelerating economic tech advancement between the world and the continent. From Marrakech, Morocco, Mayo Adegoke for Channels Television.
So now from Marrakesh, we're going to Istanbul, Turkey, where the IATA AGM is concluding today. We have joining us from there the Regional Vice President for Africa and Middle East of IATA, joining us to give us some highlights from the meeting. Mr. Kamil Al-Awadir joins us. Mr. Awadir, thank you so much for your time, and good morning. I think Turkey is 2 hours ahead of Nigeria.
Yeah, it's just turned afternoon here in Turkey, and it's been already a very, very busy morning, and things are looking good.
Great. So I think the meeting is concluded now. Could you give us some highlights from the AGM? We know, of course, top on the list is the issue of blocked funds, which Nigeria is highly involved. But let's get some other highlights, and then we'll go back to that trapped funds.
So in general, we reported to the member airlines and pretty much the globe how well the aviation industry recovered this year globally. We're expecting it to turn positive by the end of this year. Of course, then we broke it down into regions. Africa, unfortunately, is lagging behind, and we expect Africa to break into a profit by the end of 2024. But overall, passenger numbers are really good. Cargo numbers are really good, and the airlines are performing really well. We do have some obstacles, which is the issues between Russia and Ukraine. We have the still relatively high price of oil and the capacity issues with some of the airports in Europe. But in general, I think the aviation industry has demonstrated its resilience and managed to survive the coronavirus quite well and has recovered very, very well this year.
So when we go to this issue of trapped funds, which unfortunately Nigeria is leading, I think the top 5 that's owing about 63% of the funds to foreign airlines. So tell us what's the real picture with Nigeria and what's IATA planning to do about it?
So yeah, the block funds have reached about 812 million. So globally, this is about 38% of block funds in one country globally, and this is an extremely high number. I don't think we've ever had this before, and it needs to be tackled. Unfortunately, during our engagement last year, and as the old government was moving out and new governments coming in, everything paused. Since the 29th of last month, May, I think I'm looking forward to re-engaging with the entities in the new government, and I'm hopeful that they can understand the impact this will have on Nigeria in many areas, whether it is GDP or foreign investment and so on and so forth. It's going to damage Nigeria big time if this issue is not on the top of the priority list for the new government.
So already there are talks of increase in ticket prices because of this. Help us to relate it. I know you said there are other consequences too if this continues.
So ticket prices is supply and demand generally. Generally, that's the normal way of how you price a ticket. The airline has to make a profit or is not going to operate that flight. In this case, you have the demand exceeding the supply because airlines are now weary of operating into Nigeria. That pushes the prices of the tickets up. And then, of course, if you consider 50% sales of tickets outside Nigeria and the other 50% inside Nigeria, and the airline needs the cash quickly to operate its next flight, but it's not receiving the cash from Nigeria, then the price is actually added onto the ticket to try to hopefully compensate for that loss.
So you're hoping to get the attention of the new administration led by President Bola Tinubu. What exactly are you hoping for? Because I do know that about a month ago, there was the issue of FX supply is a challenge in the country, and that's obviously why we have this and having this conversation. And then there was now a rate that was called IATA rate that was created to make it easy. So what would be some of your requests? Would it also have to do with the rates, or you just want, these funds to be released?
Yeah, so this is a misconception, and I don't know how it was created, but we operate in 193 countries, right? So this IATA rate has appeared a couple of months ago, I think, in Nigeria. We don't have a rate. We never have a rate. What we do is usually revert to the central bank of each country for them to provide us the rate. We have nothing to do with it at all. I'm not sure what triggered it off in Nigeria. Our hope is that we can engage with the government, come up with a solution that is comfortable for both parties, and start paying off the backlog of $812 million. Okay, it can't remain as is, and it should not get worse than it is right now. We need to engage and find a permanent solution for this. You mentioned that FX is an issue for Nigeria. that does not mean that Nigeria doesn't have FX. They do have hard currency. It's just a priority that the government needs to do and calculate where these FX are going, and it's simply remanagement of its foreign exchange.
So finally, now I'll let you go. I know you have a very tight schedule. If nothing is done in the near future, what could happen?
I think if nothing is done, most of the airlines will pull out from Nigeria, and immediately people will say, "Oh, that's good for the Nigerian airlines because then they can operate on with no competition." But at the same time, once all the airlines pull out of Nigeria, they'll prevent the Nigerian airlines from operating too, which means that effectively the aviation industry will collapse in Nigeria, and there's a lot of foreign money coming into the country because of the aviation. And of course, there's a lot of people working in the aviation industry in Nigeria. The aviation industry contributes to Nigeria's GDP and so on and so forth. So this will be detrimental to Nigeria if the aviation industry collapses and if a quick solution isn't found to handle the $812 million that's blocked.
All right, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to speak with us, Regional Vice President for Africa and Middle East for International Air Transport Association, that's IATA, Mr. Kabil Al-Awidil. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
All right, now more to some domestic issues. One of the changes that the oil and gas landscape is experiencing at this time is the end of crude swap. According to the NNPCL, the National Petroleum Company Limited has said that it's winding down crude swap contracts with traders and will pay cash for petrol import. The GMD said that, adding that private companies could begin importing petrol as soon as this month, June. Well, the thing is, I don't think a lot of Nigerians actually understand, even before it comes to an end, this issue of crude swap. So we're going to delve into that just a little bit. Joining us from our Abuja studio for that conversation is Dr. Abubakar Alkali, a petroleum engineer and energy expert. Dr. Alkali, good morning. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Ini. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so a lot of Nigerians would now be knowing about the crude swap at this time when the NNPCL is saying it's ending. So help us to understand. I know I saw an article you wrote and you did some calculation, how it's capturing subsidy and all of that. Help us understand more about this crude swap.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much again. The crude swap, which is otherwise known as DSDP, that's direct sales, direct purchase agreement, is a kind of agreement between the NNPC and third parties, majorly oil marketers. They call them consortium of both indigenous and foreign marketers. So in that context, the NNPC allocates, a dedicated volume of, crude oil, okay, to this consortium and say, okay, bring or import equivalent volume of refined products. Basically, the contract actually contains basically the petrol, the kerosene, that's DPK, and gas oil. So bring any of this, but majorly it is the petrol that comes in. So they take this crude oil they take it abroad to a refinery abroad, they get it refined, and they bring it to the NNPC. And it is supposed to be a direct swap arrangement where equivalent, volume of refined products is brought, in place of the crude oil. For example, if the NNPC allocates 1 million barrels of crude oil, it is expected that the importer, the marketer, will bring in 1 million liters equivalent of 1 million barrels of crude oil. in form of refined products. So also another thing to look at, in that article you mentioned, what I was trying to do was simply to look at the landing cost, which is the key thing, which was, what the subsidy was all about. What the subsidy is simply looking at the landing cost and the regulated price. And then the government pays the difference, between the landing cost and the regulated price. But that said, I think it is a good thing that the DSDP has gone, and you now have direct, importation, direct cash payments. Okay. However, there is the need to carry out a forensic audit of the DSDP so as to, understand the situation and, make the process better. Now, within this context, you actually find out that there is an issue here because the government has removed subsidy. And in that context, government cannot regulate prices, okay? You cannot regulate price under a deregulated, sector. The downstream sector of the oil industry is more or less now deregulated. However, there is one thing which is very, very critical, and which is that there should be enforcement. Okay, NNPC has released a template of, prices per liter between 488 naira in Lagos to 500 and about 37.47 naira in Maiduguri and Damaturu. Now, within that context, you actually find out that it is very difficult to expect that the marketers will stick to this price. And you see, I'm saying this so that we don't run into a situation where a liter of petrol gets to 1,000 naira if adequate measures are not taken. And these measures are enforcement. Now, what the NNPC or the Nigerian Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority cannot fix prices, but they can enforce the laws. And this enforcement means they should ensure that, you see, public interest is protected. You cannot have a situation where a marketer imports
Dr. Alkali, let me just jump in there because it sounds contradictory when you say the NNPCL is now deregulated. So the NNPCL cannot fix prices, and yet we expect a government agency to regulate or ensure, that prices are being followed. How do we balance that? Because, when you say a market is deregulated, it means supply and demand, will interchange and determine what the price will be, which is why I believe the NNPCL has said that now you can have more people go into importing of petrol and determine the price.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, the fact is, what actually gave the NNPC or the Nigerian Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, you see, the leverage or, if you will, the audacity to fix prices is because of subsidy. Is because there is an inbuilt subsidy. Government pays subsidy. So it can say, okay, since I'm paying subsidy, you have to sell at this price. And I give you an example. If, which I actually think I mentioned at the beginning, but I'll say it again. If an importer brings in under, the DSDP or whatever arrangement, if the importer brings in petrol at a landing cost of 445 naira, for example. Now, how the subsidy system works is the government will say, out of this 445, maybe including profit, I will pay 200 naira. Or I will actually pay 245 naira. 245. That's 445 minus 245, which is 200. So I'm saying that you have to sell at 200 since I have given you the balance. Now, why the NNPC or the government or the NMDPRA cannot fix price now is because that difference is not paid. Okay, so it's left to the market forces, fundamental market forces of demand and supply to now determine. If you are not paying subsidy, then you cannot tell the marketer what to sell. Government has lost ground, and I think I wrote this, I included this in that article. Government has lost the ground to set prices, but as I said, what can be done is not to set price, okay? Because you cannot set price under a deregulated sector. This is deregulated now. Deregulation means it is now left for market forces to determine the price. Obviously, more competition, more supplies could potentially bring the system down. But also, you should remember that this is like a cartel, you see, so it's very difficult for that to happen. But you see, what I was saying basically is that we cannot, the NNPC or the regulator, the NMPDRA cannot fix price, but they can enforce the rule to ensure that public interest is, secured, okay, is protected. Because if a marketer brings in a product at 450 naira, you see, that marketer cannot sell it at 1,000 naira. This could lead to exploitation. It's actually exploitation. So the regulator, the NMDPRA, and the NNPC and other agencies, relevant stakeholders, relevant agencies of government, MDS, should actually ensure that the public is not exploited, okay, by this importation, by the importers, by the marketers. Because if you leave it without enforcement, a marketer will bring in a product at 400 naira landing cost and then push it to 1,000. And I tell you, we actually stand the risk of a liter of petrol jumping to 1,000 naira if enforcement is not, instituted. So there is need to enforce the law. And how do we do this? Now, yeah. So briefly.
Okay, briefly, go ahead, because I wanted to ask, but go ahead, just briefly, please.
Or briefly, the NNPC and the NMDPRA should establish landing cost, at the ports. On arrival, what is the landing cost? And including other components of the landing cost, what is the landing cost at the pump? Then should ensure that the ex-pump price is actually set in such a way that the public is not exploited by the marketers. All
right, so thankfully we have Dangote, and Dangote has promised that by end of July we're going to have supplies from that refinery. Obviously, that should be able to reduce the landing cost, and we expect that to feed into the pump price.
Absolutely. This is one component again. And I think as far as I know, there is a contract that was signed between the NNPC and Dangote for the supply of 300,000 barrels per day of crude oil to Dangote. Now, if you now take that away from 600 and from 445, okay, Dangote's capacity is actually 650,000 barrels, you see, per day. The refinery, Dangote's refinery, can refine 650,000 barrels per day, which is way above the daily consumption. The daily consumption in Nigeria is estimated actually to be 65 million liters of petrol. So now that 65 million liters is actually 445,000 barrels, because 1 barrel of crude oil actually has 170 liters of refined products. Now, if you multiply these 300,000 barrels that will be supplied to Dangote, you actually have about 37,000 liters of petrol, okay? And that is about half, you see? So out of this 170 of refined products, actually 73% is PMS, that's petrol, and the rest are kerosene, gas oil, and the rest of the byproducts. So the point I'm trying to make here is that, you see, the agreement between NNPC and Dangote can actually supply, when Dangote starts bringing out the product, can actually, supply half about half of Nigeria's daily consumption requirement of petrol. Okay? So in a way, that could mean that the NNPC can actually call the shots. So that is if this refined product, which is about 37 million liters of petrol, if it is under the arrangement that the whole 300,000 liters, 300,000 barrels or 37 million liters will be given to NNPC, it means NNPC can still call the shots. It can still dictate the price, okay? Ensure that the half of the 65 million liters can now be sourced from importers, from the marketers. That is, in a nutshell, half of the 65 million liters daily consumption of petrol can be sourced from Dangote. Under this arrangement to supply 300,000 barrels of crude oil to Dangote, NNPC to supply 300,000 barrels of crude oil to Dangote. Now, half of the daily consumption requirement is taken care of. What is required is to source the other half. So if you have this half consumption, already in the kitty, okay, it means you can dictate the price. So it means NNPC can still dictate the price and ensure that the price of petrol is, brought down as much as possible. Even the landing cost now, as you rightly stated, the landing cost, okay, will now go down, obviously, because the landing cost from Dangote will be lower.
Exactly.
Than if you are importing it, because that's not importation.
All right.
That's production. That's local production.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Abubakar Alkali, petroleum engineer and energy expert, for breaking that down for us, especially the issue with the deal swap, which is coming to an end, according to the NNPCL. So, this just makes us look forward more to the production or supply from Dangote Refinery, which we hope will start before the end of July. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me, Ini.
All right, so we do know that that strike that the NLC was calling for was supposed to start tomorrow has been suspended as NLC, TUC, the union labor unions are in talks with the federal government. They're meeting again on June the 19th, and we hear that there's so many things on the table, which includes rehabilitation of roads and infrastructure, refineries are part of it. So, I think Nigerians are looking forward to that talks and agreement, and more importantly, implementation of the agreement or whatever they come forward. That will make it easier at this time for Nigerians. But let's take a break now. When we come back, more relevant and current conversations await you on the other side of Business Morning here on Channels Television. You're welcome back to watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. It's commodities time now, and we have joining us for that Bolanle Agbaje, Senior Analyst of Financial Derivatives Company. She's in the studio here. I want to start with, earlier, good morning. So earlier today on our Sunrise program, my colleague Malpe, she was reading the papers and she got to a part that talked about the cooking gas price slashing, yes. And she got so excited. Unfortunately, I'm the same because, we deal with these things directly.
Of course.
But it hasn't trickled down yet.
It hasn't necessarily trickled down with something we've just heard about today as well. The last time I bought cooking gas, the 12.5 kg was about 9.3. So if they're saying it's dropping now to about 6,000, which is a huge drop. It's obviously welcome.
We're saying if it was a hike now, they would have implemented it. But now, because I still called my gas man this morning and he told me it's 9,000.
Yes.
I don't see much of a difference.
Yeah, but people are suffering. So any price drop for businesses, I don't think it's naturally welcomed for the consumers. But when you're talking about businesses spreading that kind of news, I don't think it's great for them. But all in all, it's just showing that cooking gas prices is reflective of demand and supply, situation or the market conditions currently. And obviously last year we had seen prices peak because of the fact that there was little supply. There was also the dollar issue that was feeding onto prices because we import a certain amount of our, LNG produce as well. So now that you're seeing supply stabilize, it's natural that translates into prices. And I know most people are also saying that this should be the trajectory for petrol petrol as well. And that's what, some of the regulators have been mentioning, although now nobody is seeing that because it's really biting hard. But we're hopeful that obviously in the few, maybe not months, because that's being very optimistic, but when prices stabilize, the market forces stabilize, and regulators make sure that there's no collusion amongst, some of those marketers, then, it's natural for the prices to drop. We've seen that with diesel price. We've also seen that with jet fuel prices. Currently, I think diesel price is about 670, 700 naira per liter, which is great for us. So going forward, it's just that obviously now it's trying times for many Nigerians, but we do hope that going forward, the market forces brings down the prices, especially when supply stabilizes.
Yeah, because the NNPCL has promised us that there'll be more suppliers, and I believe if it's a market that is profiting, there'll be business people who will be interested in importing.
Of course.
Even before Dangote, even though Dangote is supposed to come in just next month.
Of course.
But you can
and increase competition as well.
Yes, you can also have business people even get from Dangote.
Yes.
You understand, for local domestic consumption. That will saturate the market and bring down the price.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, it's just a matter of time for the market to naturally stabilize, and we find where our supplies are coming from, and what happens with demand going forward. And then we can even see in Nigeria the peak periods for demand for petrol, and the off-peak periods as well, because I don't think that has been the case because of the regular scarcity and all of that we had seen in the market. So it's a good time for us, although we had mentioned petrol subsidy has to go. It's unfortunate that the way the government has gone about it hasn't been great, but all in all, it has to go, and we have to face the realities.
So we have to face it one way.
We definitely do. Whether or not it should have been implemented, in the past 15 years or whatever, but now that we have actually done it, it's just time to move forward and
let's face the music. It's funny how when we got the videos from 2012, 2014, I think,
when the country was really
when there were a lot of protests. I remember during the administration of President Jonathan, when he was serious about getting it off, and then you had people who are in power today fighting it, and today they are the ones preaching the gospel of removing subsidy.
it. But
sometimes it just makes you laugh, but these are the realities that we have to face. Sometimes you don't just condemn other people's because they're opposition party or something.
I think now they're pressed to remove it, and that's just because we've had the effect of COVID, we've had the effect of the war. The budget is not the same. Funding the budget is not the same as it was before. It's becoming very hard to source for funds. So I guess that's why, they've been put in a tight spot and make sure that, they look for ways, or the trade-offs of this subsidy. You can't keep funding for consumption. You need to fund for production and, ways to increase our growth levels within the country. And I think that it's just that their hands are tied at the moment.
And they have to face reality.
And they have to face reality.
Well, we got carried away with that, but I mean, we can't go without talking about this OPEC cuts.
Yes.
Nigeria agreeing to that. I'm like, we have not even met with our original quota, and we're agreeing to cut again.
I know.
Maybe it's not going to affect us anyway.
I know the argument, for Nigeria, the argument behind it, I don't think would have, worked, in the sense that for the past how many months we have failed to meet, in fact, years now, we have failed to meet our quota, and it doesn't seem realistic for them to keeping a quota at about 1.7, and we're still producing at about 1.3 or even less than that. So I think the argument for Nigeria didn't work out this time. But I know going forward, because the OPEC does meet regularly, so it's not set in stone. We know that obviously for next year they've imposed that our production should be about 1.3 from January to December. But it's something that can change, especially if we can prove that we can increase our supply. And all in all, most of these OPEC plus producers, they consider the producers first anyways. So trying to increase our production to a certain level, I don't think is something that they would frown upon. But all in all, Saudi Arabia has decided to cut by
theirs. Yes. Imagine when we can't even meet up with theirs.
Yes.
They're cutting theirs by $1 million.
Yes, because the budget that they have right now is based on priced at $75 to about $80 per barrel. So it's very important and very
they make it
very crucial.
They tighten supply to make it work.
Exactly.
I hope one day we'll be able to do that.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much. We really have to go now to go to the market now. Bolanle Agbaje, Senior Analyst with Financial Derivatives. Thank you for your time. Let's head to equities now, where the market started marginally negative last week. Will Ibon comes in with the details to tell us why we would allow the market to close.
Why would allow the market to close?
Why would you allow the market to close negative?
Don't say because I'm wearing something similar, a shade to red, doesn't mean that I allow the market to close.
It's your fault that the market closed in the red yesterday, even though it was marginal. But we're going to investigate.
Don't put this on me.
We will investigate this.
So we saw the first marginal loss. The first negative close for the markets yesterday after the rally. That we saw following the new president's government policies inauguration speech last week. The markets rallied to new record highs ever recorded on the NGX. We saw that dropped yesterday, 0.02%, taking the oil share index to 55,806 points, still on the 55,000 level, and the market cap is still at the 30 trillion naira mark. Now, we see month to date now as moderated. It still remained at 0.1%. Now, we see year to date at 8.9%. But we're going to be talking to our analyst for today is Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, is CEO, Finance with Mukhtar. Good morning. Mr. Mukhtar, it's good to have you on the program.
Good morning, Will. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I was just talking about last week where we saw that explosive rally on the NGX. Equities recorded its highest single-day rally ever. And can this rally, I just want to know, can it be sustained, or should we expect a correction as some analysts have projected, seeing that we started on a negative note anyways?
Well, that's a rally. The rally was based on pronouncement. It's a pronouncement rally. What the president said, the market took the good news from the president, unification of the exchange rate, removal of subsidy, all these policies that the market have prayed for. He said investors will be able to repatriate their funds back if you make money from Nigeria. Then also he talked about we look at investment tax to see how you can make it better for investors. So when the market got that, then I call it the pronouncement rally. And after that, we need to begin to see that work. So whether the market will sustain the rally that it started now is all depending on the structures that are we going to see the unified exchange rate anytime soon? We're waiting to see. Already we are seeing that the subsidy is gone. If anything is go by the meeting with labor, the government have not shifted their ground. Labor now is not saying reversal. They are saying you need to increase our wages. You need to increase our wages. You need to do some palliative in place. So that shows that subsidy has come to stay. And so the rally will continue in the petroleum sector. You've seen that all through, even when the market went down, the petroleum sector still look up here. So definitely.
I was going to mention the oil and gas sector, which has been an outlier since last week. We saw it hit 10% at some point. Now, yesterday, it was up over 2%. Is it the next big thing following the subsidy removal? Is that where investors should be eyeing at the moment?
Well, it's the next big thing. When you look at the policy, it's the next big thing. But again, another big thing is the banking sector. Remember that some of these petroleum marketers companies are owing the banks some loans that they've not been able to pay for a while now. So definitely that means those loans will be paid now. That will reflect on the bank balance sheet. So definitely what the bank will lose in terms of their issue with the telecom, they will gain in terms of recovery in price with the oil marketers. And if the government continue with the subsidy regime, knows that most of the oil marketers will be approaching the banks for facilities. And again, with the right price, then definitely you will see those numbers of the bank also still coming up. And also the oil company do it. So the two places that we take this time might just be the banking sector and the oil and gas sector. And maybe the industrial goods sector because of infrastructural pronouncement also made by the president.
Thanks for naming those industries for investors to look to trade and not to fade. But just very quickly before I let you go, is it bullish or bearish close for today? Where do you stand? Bullish or bearish? One word.
I think I'm seeing the bearish trend because I see profit taking.
Okay.
And then I see rehabilitation of portfolio, but I still have my bull in the oil and gas sector. Outside of that, every other one might just suffer some little market depression today.
Thank you so much, Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Mukhtar, for sharing your insights on the program.
My pleasure with us.
So, Ini, I don't know where you got your bull. Is it in the banking sector? Industrial?
Well, as Mr. Mukhtar said, oil and gas is getting attention now.
Yes.
So, I mean,
I thought you had a different, sector that you like to put
I know
your eye on.
my most favorite is the finance, the banking.
Yes.
So this is just a conditional, temporary attention. Don't worry.
You've shifted loyalties, Ini.
We'll be back. All right, let's head to London where Juliana is standing by. Juliana, good morning. Yesterday, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, had a speech talking about stop the boats and, culminating some of his achievements into that speech. And I know there's been reactions to that since yesterday.
Good morning, Ini. Yes, there has been mixed reactions to yesterday's pronouncement by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak that he's stopped the boat's plans seemingly is working because year on year, the amount of people crossing over illegally into England from France has dropped by about 20%, according to him. I think we're still waiting to see those figures. Lots of journalists have been fact-checking what Rishi said yesterday. They don't believe it's going as swimmingly as he may claim. But of course, it's deeply controversial. Why? Because under these new illegal migration bill, which is still going through the House of Lords, I think it resumed reading yesterday. It's being scrutinised extensively by those who sit in the chamber. Under this new migration bill, if you are caught coming into this country illegally, particularly from the Channel, so this is either using a small dinghy or being in the back of a lorry, you will be detained, you'll be promptly removed, and you'll be banned from coming into this country ever again. And I think it's that full life ban which has got lots of people up in arms, particularly the opposition Labour Party, because many of these people coming in, we know, are children or very young adults who may be making a wrong decision because they don't have any other options, and then to be banned permanently is just too much. I think one of the other controversies, of course, involves Rwanda and the fact that the British government then under the former Home Secretary Priti Patel and Rishi Sunak's predecessor Boris Johnson, they struck this over £150 million deal so that some of these illegal migrants would be shipped over to Rwanda. And unfortunately for the government of Rwanda, no asylum seeker coming into this country wants to go to Africa. They want to stay in Europe. So as I said, it is going through a second reading in the House of Lords. Will it go through? We don't know. But according to Rishi Sunak, and just seeing how pumped up he was yesterday, the Conservative government are going to do whatever they can to reduce migration, whether that's stopping international students from bringing in their dependents or placing a blanket ban on anyone who comes here illegally. The Prime Minister is certain that that is going to be enough of a deterrent.
Yeah, and Juliana, Apple's new product, mixed reality headset, it was all over every page you turn on the internet. How are the British people receiving this? Do they have the money for it?
Well, it's a lot of money. As you said, I think it's called a Vision Pro headset, which was one of the mainstays yesterday at the start of Apple's worldwide conference, which brings together, of course, loads of tech fanatics, always looking to see what the tech giant is going to have in store for the public over the next 12 months. That was always going to be the steal. And according to Apple CEO Tim Cook, this headset is basically going to be a seamless transition between the real world and the virtual world. I don't even know what world we're in at the moment, because we're talking, of course, virtually. It is very expensive. It's going to cost $3,000 or $3,500. It's not available yet. It's going to be available at the beginning of next year. And of course, you can get it online or at an Apple store. I think it is obviously too much money for most ordinary people, but I'm sure we are going to start seeing it on social media soon.
Don't worry, Juliana.
But I think the fact that it's
we're going
Pro,
to be extraordinary people, and then we'll be able to get it.
Exactly. In fact, perhaps I'll be able to do this crossing with you from home. But experts say because it does have Pro on it, it does mean that it is the high-end version. Once it's removed, I'm sure people like us, normal people in it, will be able to buy a headset.
All right, Juliana, thank you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. You too.
All right, so I don't know if Laddie has that or he has... No, is it ordinary or an extraordinary according to Juliana? Can you afford that?
Well, it depends on what sentiment is in the market.
Oh,
since it's
well, you're afraid, your market is afraid.
It's quite fearful now, so I'm sure that kind of price, about $3,500 for that virtual reality headset.
Save up for it. So you'll be able to do crossover with Juliana, seamlessly.
Right.
There'll be no division between the UK.
I can work on the metaverse and stuff. Wow, quite interesting. But a huge price to pay, I must say.
Yes,
Let's look at the sentiment of the market. Yeah, we're in fear. Yeah, this was coming. This was a long time coming. Been in neutral for a while now, and I did say at some point we might see fear in this market, and it's here right now, 44 points. That's what the fear greed index showing that a lot of traders are afraid right now in this market. Let's look at the top cryptocurrencies that we track. We see Bitcoin there, big drop there, $25,779 yesterday. It dropped down about 5%. We got that news about the SEC suing the biggest cryptocurrency exchange in the world. That's Binance there. And we saw the market react to that. Bitcoin dropping from about 26,800 to 25,000. A big drop. We see the big red candle in the market. We see Ethereum not left out, 2.90% down, but still holding on to that 1,800 level. BNB, yeah, that's the one in the mix of this whole news now, 7.78% down, losing that $300 level, $277 this morning. We see Binance definitely affected, by that news yesterday. Cardano, 35 cents, also getting a big hit, 6.16%. Did the SEC in the US did deem Cardano and some other cryptocurrencies as securities. So I think we're seeing the reaction to that. XRP, even though they're supposed to be winning that case in the US, is down 4.04% this morning. Let's see if we have Michael Naji now, financial market analyst. Hello, Michael. All right, looks like Michael's not there yet. So, yeah, that's what's impacting the market, at this point. Let's see the top gainers this morning. Kava managing to eke out a good profit this morning, 11.79%, $1.09. Kava's been on a downturn for a while now, but flipping the market this time, even though we see the market heading down, Kava did manage to stay up, and we saw stable coins on the top gainers counter. When you see stable coins on the top gainers counter, you know that the market is fearful. Traders are looking for stability, and that's why they run into most of these stable coins. And we see the meme new kid on the block, meme token Pepe, down 15.67%, double-digit losses is what we're seeing in the market today. Luna, that's down 14.35%. We see Sand, Metaverse narrative there, didn't take that one up. It's down 13.27%. Also deemed a security by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. And we see Sweet Token, that's 81 cents, down 11.64%. So we see this market is fully in the red right now. Everyone's waiting to see what Binance has to say in response to the U.S. SEC, because it's the Binance U.S. arm that is being sued by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. So it is a very dramatic turn of event we see in the crypto market yesterday. and we know how crypto investors react to bad news.
Very sensitive.
Really bad news, yesterday. But some say, well, it's not that bad. It's just Binance US. The other arm of Binance is still running quite well. So remains to be seen what happens. Maybe another long-running court battle between the US SEC and Binance.
Yeah, I hope another country doesn't also take another arm of Binance, to court, and then, of course, cause a lot of jitters in the market.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Ladi, for that.
Thank you.
Well, that's it on the program today. Thank you so much. I hope it's been worth your time. We promise to make it even better tomorrow, which will be the midweek edition, so do join us then. Meanwhile, Ladi Williams will be back 1:30, Business Incorporated, update from the world of business. And do remember that you can watch Business Morning, Business Incorporated every time on YouTube. I'm Inijon Mekwa. Make some money. Have a good day.